Hello, everybody, and welcome back for a brand new episode of Horrifically Horrifying, presented by the Hollywood Critics Association. My name is Heather Wixson. I'm the managing editor for DailyDead.com, and I am joined, as always, by my kick-ass co-host, Kevin Taft from the Edge Media Network. Hello.
Hello. Should I do a kick?
Yes.
I did. You just.
I decided we have to be we have to be our own cheerleaders. Like we have to just. We're both kick-ass.
Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay.
Yes. Are we Arsenio Hall now?
Yeah.
Is that what we're turning the show
There's
into?
limited space here for me to do cheers and
Gotcha.
kick my feet up.
Okay. I got it. So anyway, for all of you at home are like, just get on with the show, guys. We don't really care about your calisthenics or whatever it is. I don't know about you, Kevin, but I feel like we are rolling right into movie season. Like
we are.
It's on.
Yeah, we are two busy people. You more than me, but it's getting a little stressful.
It is. I wasn't expecting this so soon. I feel like we really needed, like, I wish I would have appreciated maybe January through March a little more.
Right?
Because now I'm just like, oh my God, there's like movies every week now, and there's multiple. And now we're doing studio movies, and we're also doing the indie movies. And whoa, okay. Yeah,
Yep.
it's happening really quickly.
And it's horror. Like they're releasing those like left and right.
Yeah, I actually I don't know if I'm actually surprised by it, because I think genre movies do pretty well regardless. Like I know everybody says it's sort of like everybody looks down on the genre, but I think typically they perform pretty well. And I think so many of us have been waiting for so long, and now we're finally getting to the stuff we've been waiting like over a year for. Especially this week, because we have the return to Saw, Spiral. And I know you're sad because you didn't get to see it yet.
I'm so sad.
I think you're going to really like it, because we talked about one of the interesting things, and I can talk about this. I'm not going to talk spoilers or anything like that, because I want people to go on this, because it's really a fun ride. But it was funny because you and I were talking about, like, okay, so if we're going to go watch this movie, like, what are the essential Saw movies to watch to get yourself ready for Spiral? Turns out, none of them. I mean, yes, I would always tell people to watch the Saw movies, but I think what they've done here with this sort of new story is that they've taken it in a direction where it gives fans of Saw something that they're familiar with, something that they know, and these little nuggets of fun little homages throughout.
Sure.
But the story is so accessible to anybody. Like, you basically just need to know that Tobin Bell at some point played a guy named John Kramer, and he was Jigsaw. That's pretty much it. Which is, I think, is a really, really smart idea. And it's such a hard thing to pull off when you have to do something that feels like it adheres to a tradition of a franchise, but it also is its own thing. But it really, really does it well. I was extremely happy with Spiral. I was pretty nervous about it, because I was like, God, like, you have all these years of mythology and everything like that. And like, we went and watched them all, pretty much in the course of like 3 nights. So I was ready. And then I was like, we sat down and I was like, we didn't need to do any of that, which was kind of nice. I mean, I will always, if there's franchises, I'm going to go back and watch stuff, especially if it's been a while. But I was like, it was kind of nice and freeing, where it was just, certain things of Saw are staying in Saw. And then this is its own thing. But what's kind of cool is that there is room to go back to Saw if you want to.
Right. Okay.
Because I'm sort of like a nerd about it, and there's like sort of this one storyline that's always been dangling out there that involves the character of Detective Hoffman, who we see at some point in 7 being put into the infamous room where Carrie Elways and Lee Winnell was in the first Saw, and it's been a part of the franchise. And they basically leave him there, but we never see him die.
No.
So, I mean, it's been like 12 years since he was put in that room or whatever, so he's probably dead. But the nice thing is that, they've said, like, if this does well, we are open to, not only moving Spiral forward, but also going back to Saw as well. So
interesting.
Yeah. So, but we're going to go see it again at the drive-in this weekend. Hopefully, I'm hoping they pair it up with Mortal Kombat. So that'll be lots of gooey, gory fun.
Which drive-in do you go to?
We do the Mission Tiki.
Okay, that's the one that I usually like to go to as well.
Yeah, shout out for the Mission Tiki. We used to do Vineland a lot, but I don't like their projection, and their sound is usually pretty terrible.
Is it?
It really is. We went last year to see the David Arquette. Yeah, that we went to see the David Arquette documentary. And it's Screen 2. And every time we've been there to Screen 2, for some reason, between our old car and our new car, we can never get the radio station right. And it
Really?
always, yeah. So, and it always makes like crackling noises. And I actually took an audio recording of it because it was awful. I couldn't even believe it. But I was there to support the documentary. So we weren't going to
Sure.
leave. But yeah, I was pretty bummed out.
That stinks. I know
So,
I've been there. I can't remember what we saw there, but I almost feel like we saw, and it was good. Like everything was good. I think we saw Do the Right Thing there,
oh, okay.
but I'm not sure. I can't remember. But yeah, Tiki is usually the one we were going to all summer.
Yeah,
For
they've
sure.
got the best projection, the best sound. We love
Yeah.
it. You know,
Yeah.
although there's a really great one. I am forgetting it's associated with them, and I'm totally blanking on where it's at. But the view around it is a lot more open. The Van Buren, that's what it is.
Oh, right. Yes.
And it's like gorgeous out there. We went
Is
there
it?
last year to see Goonies and Gremlins. They were doing a double feature of those. And we're like, yeah, why not? It's Sunday night. Let's go to the drive-in. And it was like the most perfect sunset. The mountains were everywhere because it's kind of industrial around
Yeah.
the Mission Tiki. And out there, it was just so pretty. So
Really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
but
All right.
I
I
like,
might check
yeah,
that out.
yeah, I like the fact that, you know, even though we're getting back into theaters, although I'm still, you know, I'm still a little nervous, but I'm only half vaxxed right at this point. But I like the drive-in as an option because I
Yeah.
just feel like it's a little extra comfortable. I think, you know, there's a lot of people who are sort of making fun of people for being nervous about going back into, you know, society, if you will. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm still not ready to sit in a crowded theater yet.
I mean, they're not too crowded yet, but I'm waiting for that to start happening too.
Yeah.
We went to see Fried Green Tomatoes. I know that's not horror related, but I went with a friend of mine to see that because I hadn't seen it in 30 years. Well, it's a 30-year anniversary.
Okay. What's
But it
funny?
was like 5 people in the theater besides us.
Because there's like this is gonna sound like the weirdest conversation. So I'll say this and we'll move it forward. But that's the movie where they take the mirror and they're like looking at their hoo-haws,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Because like I remember seeing that in theaters with my mom, and I was just like, oh my God, I don't even this is no, it was almost worse than a sex scene. I was just like, this is weird. Like, okay, all right.
I actually forgot most of the movie. And so when that happened, I'm like, oh, right, that's this movie. But I was reacting to everything that was happening. Like,
It's cute
it was
though.
my
I like
first
that
time.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I
it is
love
good.
Mary Stuart Masterson. So
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that's like a good like mom movie, like with like Steel Magnolias.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, where
Which
you
I
don't.
watched on Easter because it felt like an Easter movie.
It totally is because it starts in Easter and ends on
Yep,
Easter.
exactly.
So,
Yep.
I if I had it, I would have probably watched it that day too. So
I think I bought it because it was $3.99 to rent or buy. So I was like, I'll just buy it.
Just buy it. So I'm
Someday
sure
I'll
everybody
watch
is like, I'm so glad I tuned into the horror show to hear about Steel Magnolias,
and fried green
tomatoes, and hoo-has. we're really digging deep, everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we were mentioning, like there's just a ton of stuff coming up because then we also this week have Army of the Dead, which is going to theaters first, and then will be on Netflix the 21st, which I thought was big dumb fun. It's definitely not perfect, but it's a little long and it's a little hokey. There's like a whole sort of storyline that I thought felt super duper forced just to add drama that didn't really need it. And but it's really good to its characters. Like it gives you a lot of really like fun character moments. It's 2.5 hours. So I think I've come to realize with Zack Snyder is that like he loves actors, and that's a good thing, but it's also a detrimental thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I think what he does here, I think really gives you a chance because it's a big ensemble. And it really gives a chance for everybody to have like their moments, which is pretty fun. And it's interesting too, because Tig Notaro was part of the recast of the movie because I forget what the name of the guy who was originally in her role, but he was like a comedian who got in trouble for some stuff with underage fans. And so they came in and had Tig basically digitally replace this guy in every scene.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And she's really fun. But you could tell there's like a weird detachment in her scenes because most of her scenes she's by
Out there.
herself,
Right.
you know, which is very interesting because like in the reverses, like if like Batista's at the fence with somebody else, like they're reacting to the guy that was originally cast.
Right.
So, but she's great. She's actually really fun.
Okay.
So I was, you know, it does some really audacious things with zombies, and like I'd rather have that, and maybe it doesn't totally work than just to see the same old zombies again.
For sure. Because I'm getting
So,
tired of that. So that's
yeah,
good to
it's there's a moment where I was like, oh, we're going here. Okay, this is interesting. And zombie tigers. Can't go wrong with Valentine, the zombie tiger.
All right. Yep. Nope. I would agree with that.
Yeah,
All right,
and
well,
a
I'm
zombie.
excited.
Yeah, and a zombie horse, too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's going for it. So, you know.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it's fun. It's got its problems, but, you know, I was never bored. So that's something, I guess. Put that on your poster, Netflix. I was never bored.
I was never bored.
You mentioned
It's a movie.
you mentioned to me you finally caught up with the first episode of Creepshow season 2.
I did. I just watched it last night. And I loved it. I thought it was fun. I mean, obviously it's not scary. But you're right. It felt like the movies. It just had a good nostalgia to it. I liked that the first one took place in like the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, I believe it was like late 70s.
Late 70s. So I like that. And then what was the second story? Oh, the Evil Dead kind of.
Yes, with Ted Raimi.
Ted Raimi, yeah. And that was fun because it was familiar. So I kind of knew what they were doing. So, and there was a surprise because I had no clue that was going to happen. So that was good.
Awesome.
I liked it. Yeah, I'm looking forward. I feel like that's my before bedtime show now.
I like that. That's good. I need a new before bedtime show. So for years, mine was Frasier.
I'm on The Nanny right now, but I'm in season 6, so I'm almost done.
I was gonna say you're probably almost done, right?
Yeah,
I've been following your nanny journey for since we started this show.
People are like, really? The Nanny? I'm like, watch it. It's hilarious.
We should have Fran on an episode once you're finished.
Oh my God, that would be. Is she in a horror movie of any sort that we can
Yes,
have her on?
Santa's Sleigh.
She's
in the opening scene of Santa's Sleigh with James Caan.
I've never seen it, but I'm friends with her ex-husband on Facebook, on Instagram.
See?
He did read one of my comments and liked it, so maybe I can try to get.
So you and Fran are basically best friends.
Yes.
That's how the internet works.
This is a dream come true.
I know, we're making this happen. Yeah, I think Santa's Sleigh, I think right now is streaming on Tubi. So yeah.
Okay. I'll find it.
Yeah, it was on Vudu for a while, but I think it's over on it pretty much lives on Tubi now. So for a long time they always would take it off of streaming right around the holidays, which would piss me off. Because for some reason I just never bought it. I'm kind of just holding out for maybe a Blu-ray, but that's probably a big if.
So, I just never even thought about watching it.
Yeah, it's totally ridiculous and over the top, but I love it. But it has the most ridiculous opening scene, Fran Drescher's in it, and James Caan, and Chris Kattan is in it, and I think Rebecca Gayheart is in it also. Yeah. And then the main movie, obviously has Bill Goldberg, who's a wrestler, as Santa. And then also it has Emile de Ravin from Lost.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and she's really good in it. She's real spunky and stuff. So
funny story. I was at a party with her once. Randomly, I was like, that's the girl from Roswell, because it was around Roswell time. And I remember there was cold cuts and you'd have to make your own sandwich at this party. It's a small pool party of some sort. I don't even know why I was there, but I remember taking bread out and put it on my plate. And she's like, are you going to get me one? And I'm thinking, do you want me to put my hand on this roll? I'm like, okay, here you go.
That's the before times.
Right. But it was also just a little I couldn't tell if she was being kind of bitchy or flirty. I didn't get it. It was weird.
It might have been flirty.
Maybe, I guess.
You never know. But yeah, that's before times behavior. We don't make other people sandwiches now.
No, we do not.
You're on your own.
Although I was with my friend at Fried Green Tomatoes, and we both got drinks. And for some reason, I had her drink in my hand and she had mine. We sat down, forgot about it. So I sipped mine. I'm like, why does mine not taste right? And she's like, mine tastes like vanilla. I'm like, that's mine. And we just switched. And like, we didn't, and then we kind of like stopped. And then we're like, whatever. And we just started.
Are you gonna die? Are you gonna die now? Is this our last show ever? Oh my gosh.
It might be, it might be.
Oh
You know,
my
if I do
gosh.
die in the next week, you're going to feel bad about saying that.
I really am. So, but make sure at least
Knock
you
on
get to
wood.
Disney first. So,
I might die there.
hey, do
People
it,
do.
do it so it's on Walt Disney's dime. So then they feel bad and then they have to pay for everything.
Yep.
You
I'll put a
know.
plaque up and it'll be great.
Yeah. So
Okay, we have gone on another journey.
we take a lot of journeys on this show. I guess we could journey into Profile since we both
Yes.
watched that.
We did.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Like, holy shit, was that
It
like
was really good.
intense?
And also not what I thought it was going to be, because even from the trailer, it seemed a little different.
Yeah.
It was almost like, and this is not to push anybody off of it, it was a little bit more dramatic, as far as there was more drama and character stuff than I thought there was going to be. Because I really kept on thinking like, oh crap, this is going to happen. Oh crap, this is going to happen. And those things didn't happen, but that's also what I would have normally just expected. So I was kind of glad that I was not knowing where it was going, what was happening. And of course, because it's based on a true story, it's a little bit more like, oh my God, this is crazy.
So, well, for anybody who's watching, so basically the movie itself follows this journalist. In reality, she was a French journalist, and in here she's a journalist from London. And she decides to take on Islamic recruiters who basically target young women in Europe, to have them sort of join up with them, sometimes to fight their battles for them. Other times, basically, it's a part of their sex trafficking trade, which is even more horrifying. And what's interesting is when I had a chance to interview Timur about the movie, and he went to go meet with this journalist. And this is something that took place probably now about 8 years ago. And this woman is still living with guards.
Really?
Because of everything that had happened with this. And I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she's still alive because she wrote a book. Because you don't really write a book if you're not here. Although I'm going to figure out how to do that. I mean, I figure I can figure everything else out. Yeah, right. But it's just so interesting when he went to meet with her, like they had to vet him like so many different ways just to like give him the information for him to meet with her in a hotel. She doesn't have a house. She has no permanent residence, and she constantly still has to move around because there is a bounty on her head still to this day. And I now it's like it's sort of made this, like this thing very real. Like we joke about like the crappy things we have to put up with covering entertainment, like we're saving the world or something. But this girl who was telling this really important story, like now basically will never have a normal life again. That's not going to happen to me for covering Candyman.
No, it'll definitely not.
So yeah, we basically don't do anything important, I think is the moral of the story here. But I'm okay with it, I think, because I don't want to live under armed guard for the rest of my life either.
But we're now reviewing her story.
Yes. So maybe one day.
Unrealistic.
Yeah. So, but I was, are you a big fan of like sort of what they call screen life was what
I do.
Basically, I'm surprised at how much I like it, for as much as like, I don't always typically love found footage, but there's something really immersive about telling stories through a computer screen. That just really catches, like, I'm just totally immersed because I feel like I'm just watching my computer and I'm in it.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, what was the first one I think I saw? No, actually I saw one years ago. I don't even remember the name of it. It was super low budget and it was like two people talking to each other and there was a supernatural element to it. There's like two scares in it. I think it was from England or something. It was years and years ago. That was probably the first one I saw like that. But then, of course, Unfriended. Was it Unfriended?
Yep, Unfriended
that
was
one.
there.
That was the first one. Like that was surprisingly terrifying.
Yeah.
Like I remember I just loved it. And then, of course, Searching came out, and there's been a couple other ones, but I really like them. I mean, I'm also I am a found footage person. For some reason, it just does it for me. For some reason,
when it's done right, I'm totally hooked. Like I still think like one of my favorites that like I don't think enough people talk about is like The Taking of Deborah Logan.
You know what's funny? Okay, so my best friend keeps on telling me to watch it, but my mom has a little bit of dementia, so part of me is like, am I in the mood to watch this? And then then somebody said it was found footage, which I didn't know. So I guess I need to watch it.
I think you'd really like it. It also, did you ever watch All My Children?
Before you were born, probably.
Okay, because like, do you remember Pearl? She was like an older character on it.
Kind of, yeah.
She was like the matriarch of like one of the families. She's the older woman in the movie.
Okay.
So as soon as I turned it on and I saw her, I was like, oh my God, it's Pearl from All My Children. I'm like, I'm probably the only horror fan right now that is like super excited about that. Barring my best friend whose wife is named Erica after Erica Kane.
Wow.
So she really is. I think is amazing. So
does she never win awards too?
No, she's actually like super freaking talented. And stuff,
Okay.
so yeah, she's a sweetheart. So she totally does not live up to the Erica name.
Okay, good.
She's like the anti-Erica Kane. But yeah, so I was like, that for me, I was like, okay, it's All My Children, I'm in, let's do this. And it's really good and really effective.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way with certain dementia stories, because my grandmother had it. It's something that like my aunt is currently struggling with. And it's like, it's somebody who uses her brain a lot for work. Like I'm just really nervous, like the day that like I'm gonna go start writing something and I just can't remember things. Like to me, that's like it's like one of my big fears. So I get it. Like when I watched Relic last year, that was a tough one.
Yep. Did you see The Father?
Yes. I was trying to think of like, when did I watch that? Yeah, that was I watched that in December.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I thought that was probably the best illustration of what it probably is like for them.
Yeah.
So it kind of opened my eye. Not that I wasn't aware, but it really kind of was like, wow, you literally just, because I was talking to my mom the other day, not to make this whole thing be personal, but for it was Mother's Day, right? But she said a couple of things that I was like, so weird that like that's what you think. Apparently, Trump worked with her at one point. And she and she trained him. She said he liked her but didn't like a lot of the other people in the office, so it didn't last very long.
Was she on The Apprentice?
I have a feeling she watches the news and has dreams and wakes up and thinks they're real.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is.
There's a lot of things like I'll be talking to you about my mom where I'm like, I very specifically remember these things, and she'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like it's like this total void. Like there's like a whole year of like when I'm just like, you don't remember this at all, and she's like, no. Yeah, I'm like, how do you not remember this like whatsoever? So yeah, I'm a little nervous about that, but if whatever happens is going to happen. But it's a terrible way to see somebody go. But so I get not wanting to dip into Deborah Logan, but I think it's handled in a way that'll be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. It's on my list. And every once in a while, I'm like, I'm going to start it. And then for some reason, I don't.
Okay. It's pretty quick, too. I think it's only like 88 minutes or something like that.
I think it's short. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like a quickie. So,
What was it? Wait, there was one other movie we were going to talk about. Profile that we both watched. What was it?
Seance. We were going to tease a little bit about Seance, which comes out next week.
Right. So, we saw Seance. We can't say anything about it because it's. But you know what? I didn't say anything.
Honestly, I mean, I think, we're not doing a formal review embargo, and it wasn't like they said to us we couldn't say that we saw it or anything.
True.
All I will say is if you are a big fan of Simon Barrett's work as a writer, you probably will very much enjoy what he does here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was super enjoyable for sure, and not what I thought it was going to be.
Same here. That was like, and don't get me wrong, the movie that I was expecting would have been awesome too, because I love like prep school horror.
Yeah.
I just because I almost actually went away to school when I was in high school, to the school in Pennsylvania. Thank God I didn't, but like it was super ridiculously expensive. I probably would have a terrible Coke problem now. Who knows? I might be doing a lot better, but I'll probably be on Coke. So,
Right.
50-50 there. I can't afford Coke now. So,
I don't even know how much it would be.
I don't either. I was just like, it's funny, like whenever I see people buying drugs in movies, I'm like, how does that work? Like, I'm such a square. Yeah. So I'll tell this, but I'll go back to Seance. But the one time we were in Vegas, we were walking through the casino, and this guy with like a backpack and looked really scroungy and looked kind of like, edgy, came up to us. He's like, "Hey, do you guys want to buy some Coke?" And I was just like, I literally was like really loud. I was like, "Oh my God, no!" And I like walked away like this self-righteous like person. But I was like, what was that? I was like, oh, Midwestern me is like, people do that. They just go up to you. And I was like, oh, I was so appalled. So I'm a
I mean, if he had a
Squares.
big backpack, it might have been Coca-Cola.
It could have been, he could have had 2 liters. It'd be like, I just thought you were thirsty.
Just want to sell it for $2.
Yeah. He's like,
Bought it for 1 and I get
I
some money
know.
back.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was like mortifying. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, nobody saw us. Do you think they're not going to follow us? I was total square. You know, so I am, you know, I'm the perfect person in any sort of like police crime situations because I'm just so unaware of that lifestyle where I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
sure. So I'm
Same.
the perfect patsy is what I'm saying. So, but Seance, like I really love the characters. And again, I love movies that just will, when you've got a big ensemble, they take the time for the characters,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. And there were some surprises. There was some humor in it that I didn't expect. Like I laughed out loud at a couple of things. I
Yeah.
purposely laughed out loud, especially towards the end. But yeah, it was a romp.
It
was a
was.
hoot and a romp. I liked it.
So yeah, I was really happy to get to see him like step out and direct.
Mm.
And I know he's got a segment in the upcoming new VHS movie.
Oh, okay.
So, because they're doing VHS 94.
Okay.
So they're going to do like a sort of a little bit of a retro VHS movie, which I'm very curious about.
That's fun.
But you know, but he's back to still writing with Adam Wingard too. So, and yeah, they're doing He-Man. And
Are they?
Yes, and something else super cool. Thundercats.
And somebody just got canceled
No,
out of He-Man.
No, it's not He-Man. It is Thundercats, and then something else super cool from like my childhood.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but yeah. So it's kind of cool to see these guys who made movies for like $3,000, like out there kicking some ass.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we've had going on. I mean, there's so many things coming up soon. We got Quiet Place 2, Conjuring 3.
Conjuring 3.
I'm like, I feel like I need a movie title with a 4 to follow that up, but we don't have
The
one.
Purge 4. It's 4, right? Technically.
No, wasn't the first Purge 4, or is that Purge 3?
What do you mean the first Purge?
That was the movie called The First Purge, where it was the prequel.
Oh, I was like, the first Purge would be number 1.
Yeah, you're like,
what's wrong with
you? Do some math. But I think
I can't remember. You might be right.
Yeah, because it's the Purge, Purge Anarchy, Purge Election Night, and then the first Purge. And now this is Purge. I forget what they're calling it, but
I can't remember either.
If you're watching
wait, isn't this the first Purge?
No, the first Purge came out a few years ago because it took place on an island. It was on like Long Island in New York, and they shut down the island.
Right.
And they were trying to get people from poor communities to take part in it.
Yeah. Oh, the Forever Purge.
Okay.
Josh Lucas is in it.
Oh.
Weird.
That's interesting.
And interesting, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I guess I've seen all of them.
Yeah.
I thought I didn't see, because I didn't like the first one, but I had some issues with it, but I liked
I didn't love the first one. The second one and the third one I thought were pretty good. 2, I think, is like the Purge movie.
Yeah, for sure. That was really, really good.
Yeah. Did you ever watch the TV show?
No.
I didn't either. I covered it for like a set visit once. But the only reason I did that was because Lee Turgison was there, who was in Point Break. And I was like, I'm going. I'm going to New Orleans at the end of June. I don't care.
You're so funny.
I was like, I will be dripping wet, like, because of humidity. Because like the minute you'll be in the airport with the air conditioning blasting, but the minute you walk into the concourse, like you're just covered in sweat. It's New Orleans. But yeah, so that was the only reason I covered it, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to Lee Turgison. So
Nice.
yeah. But yeah, I watched like a little bit of the first season, but I never had a chance to finish up with it or watch the second. I heard pretty solid things about it, so
Yeah.
But
yeah, I just never did. I don't know why.
Yeah, but now it's done, so Well, I guess we can. Nah, I feel like I'm good with the movies, so
Yeah.
Of course, somebody's probably like, "Oh, you're missing out on all kinds of good stuff." So if I'm wrong and I should catch up with it, tell me on Twitter and I'll make some time
Right.
for it.
Leave a comment.
Yes, leave a comment.
Tell us
Like,
we're crazy.
yeah,
What we're
we have a
crazy
little
about.
comment box. That's basically my Twitter feed. Is like a comment box. Be like, just fill me in. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else before we segue into our very special segment.
Let's just segue.
All right.
Do it.
Yeah, so everybody who's watching at home, we're about to take you into an interview that Kevin and I recently did with Justin Powell and David Charbonier for The Djinn, which we both were big fans of.
Yep.
And it comes out this Friday as well. I mean, everything, it's happening, kids. So I'm hoping you're all able to keep up with everything because we've got a lot coming your way. But the movie is really fantastic. I believe it's doing digital in select theaters.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to go ahead and take you into that interview, and then we'll be back to wrap everything up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our very special interview segment with the filmmakers behind the brand new film from IFC Midnight, The Djinn. We are sitting here with David, is it Charbonnet?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yes, all those years of French paid off. As well as with Justin Powell. How are you, Justin?
Doing well, thank you.
They're very great to have you guys here with us for this episode. So it's really interesting because we spoke last year because you had The Boy Behind the Door on the festival circuit, which was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. Now you're here with another film. Boy Behind the Door is going to be basically coming to Shudder very soon as well. That's got to be really exciting for you guys.
It's beyond exciting. Yeah, we can't wait to finally let the world see that movie. So that's been a long time in the making. So we're pretty pumped.
Excellent. So
Great.
Here on Horrifically Horrifying, we usually ask our guests if they have sort of a handshake horror movie. So David, I'm going to start with you. Do you, no pressure, of course, as we said, but do you have sort of that one movie that you like to share with friends, or you sort of feel like, is basically David in movie form?
That is a really tough question. I think I have to go to one of my old school favorites, Gremlins, because it's
nice.
Such a great balance of horror and a little bit of comedy, but has all the nostalgia everyone loves.
Excellent. How about for you, Justin?
So I knew Dave was going to say Gremlins because he's and for anyone listening, watching, he's an addict. He knows that world so well. But for me, it's interesting because it's okay, so I think my favorite horror movie is The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm absolutely obsessed. Love it. I feel like the movie, though, that I always like to introduce horror fans to, though, is The Descent, because then I always find that people, for some reason, a lot of people haven't seen it, and I'm how have so many people not seen this perfect horror movie? So I feel like that's the kind of my go-to for that. I don't know that either one of them embodies who I am, but
I hope not.
I love them both. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm a big fan of The Descent. I still remember the first time when I saw it in theaters, and it was so quiet in the theater. I think somebody dropped candy on the other side of the theater, and it was clear as a bell. And I've never had an experience like that ever, because everyone's usually talking, and this was a little bit before everybody had their phones and stuff like that. But it was a perfect screening. So that's probably one of those last ones of horror movies, the big horror movies where you knew everybody was into it. So I'm glad you picked that one. That's a fun one. And Gremlins is a classic.
I love Gremlins. So good.
So I'm a huge Dante fan. So
oh
that's
yeah,
pretty awesome.
And Chris Columbus is just the best.
Have you ever seen the work print version?
Have you?
I have.
Do you have it?
No, I'm not that cool.
Damn
I'm
it.
cool, but I'm not that cool. No, they every once in a while they would show it at the Arrow. And I actually went one year to see Joe Dante give a talk on it. And it doesn't really add a ton, but it's interesting because it's it has a little bit more with Judge Reinhold in it. So a lot of the stuff that sort of got cut out from the script, or sort of, because he basically ends up locking himself in the bank vault. and
Okay.
hides out there from the gremlins. And at some point, Billy and Kate come across him when they're going through the bank. So that's kind of missing. And yeah, it's not like super like violent or anything like that. I was kind of hoping maybe it was a little more on the R-rated side, like they wanted to do with it. But if you ever get a chance,
I have that version of the script somewhere.
Do
The
you?
original. Yeah, it's not the same movie at all.
That's awesome. So we are here to talk about your latest. I'm going to jump in and then Kevin's going to take over and we're going to kind of go back and forth. But I think what's really great about both of the films that you guys have recently done, that they're really fantastic stories about childhood fear, but in very, very different ways. And also kids who have to sort of struggle with things that are, you know, are sort of out of their control. I don't know if I'm even saying this the right way, but I'd love to talk a little bit sort of what was the inspiration behind this story in particular, and talk a little bit about, you know, Dylan's story in this, because it really is all him. Like for 97% of this movie, like this is his journey. And I thought that was really great.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Justin, do you want to, you're good at talking about the inspiration.
No, sure. Yeah, I mean, we in general love horror that does kind of center on children, or have like children kind of in peril within it, whether they're the leads or, you know, supporting. A lot of like our favorite horror movies growing up, I think, did that. Two that are popping into mind immediately that were really inspirational were Child's Play and Jurassic Park. Those are ones that I think draw a lot of inspiration from regularly. But interestingly, the idea of the Djinn was actually born out of, with Boy Behind the Door, it was originally going to be a go in 2018 and it got pushed. And we had decided, like amongst ourselves, like we're making a movie this year. Like I don't care how we're gonna figure it out. And we knew that we had like a few elements at our disposal. One was we had recently cast Ezra, and we knew that he was just like this star in the rafters that no one knew about yet, and then we could probably get him for any project that we wanted that year. We also had an apartment that was going to expire in a little bit over a month. And we also had just our love for children in peril. So we actually decided to craft a story around those elements. And so that's where the story was born. So it was actually born out of our limitations. And we really, like, that's the first time we've done something like that, where we really kind of like backtracked into it. And created a story with things that we knew that we had, and we're thrilled with how it turned out. Especially, yeah, Dylan's entire journey was legitimately born out of all that.
For sure.
Do you want to hop in, Kevin?
Say,
or I don't know if David wants to add anything, or
no, I was going to actually. I didn't know that was shot first. I was going to ask if you had filmed it during quarantine, because it's a one person show. So I felt like, oh, that was a clever idea to do it that way, but I guess not. One thing I did want to ask, and I don't, you know, it's funny, my best friend and I were watching it together, and he made a comment at one point saying, oh, I saw a couple references to some other movies. And then I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, then I started to notice a ton of them. And then I'm like, am I just noticing them just because I'm noticing them, or are they planting them out? Because they're all 80s movies. And it's set in the 80s. So was that on purpose? And am I off, or am I completely wrong? There was like specific, even there was even a set decoration that seemed to come from another movie. I thought it was a nod. Shoot, maybe I'm wrong.
The set deck, I don't know. But go ahead, David.
I mean, I'm sure we were really inspired. I mean, of course, we're going to be inspired by like our favorite movies, horror movies from the 80s and 90s. I'm struggling to think of any like really overt homages we put in. Okay. I'm sure there's like a billion subconscious ones.
There are a few. I do remember it was like a blur when we were putting together the script, but there were a few that were a little more intentional, but they kind of came to life more, I think, in post in some ways. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, David. We're big on homages. That even happens in Boy Behind the Door. We like our homages. But sorry, go ahead, David.
The one I'm thinking of it's more of like a music one. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Oh, well, that's definitely.
There was something on the radio that my friend noticed.
Okay, what is it? Just
well, that one was the one that there was somebody on the radio. They were talking about an escaped mental patient, which is Halloween.
Oh, right.
Because they talk about that. And then this is not, there's no spoilers or anything in this. The chair, I swear to God, it's the same chair from Poltergeist. One of the kitchen chairs.
Okay, that was not intentional.
Oh, but I think it's the same chair.
That I can confirm was not intentional.
Okay. I was all excited. I was like, it's the chair from Poltergeist.
The escape convict in general, his, like, we did want to lean into a little bit of a Michael Myers feel with him, even like what he's wearing. Supposed to be a nod to that. There are several nods within the score that are not to Halloween, but more to one of the movies I referenced, The Thing. And we had several others. I don't want to necessarily say
don't say it
for people that are gonna watch the movie, but I do know why David's like it's a blur for him, because it was kind of like the way that we wrote it was just not how we normally write things, so it does kind of feel like a little bit of a blur in that regard.
I mean, I didn't feel like to correct. I didn't feel like it was copying or anything. It felt very like intentional as far as like you said, it felt, the whole movie felt like an homage to classic kind of very contained horror movies from the 80s, which is what I loved about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We definitely.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, after Boy Behind the Door, I think we're gonna be very, very selective with any homages we put in our stories. Because
it's just Gremlins.
Yeah.
But you're gonna still torture poor Ezra in the next movie too, right? I mean, he's been put through the ringer.
The goal is to torture him in as many movies as possible. That's our new life mission.
Well, you mentioned that this was kind of a blur for David, and I'm curious if you guys could talk a little bit about sort of your collaborative process, because I'm always really interested when there's director teams. Because writing teams, I get it, because you can kind of like somebody works on certain pages or certain passages, and then they kind of come together and they see how like they tweak together. And I know you guys write and stuff too, but like how does day of work with you guys in terms of the back and forth when you're on production, like when you're in the middle of production and things like that? Like how does that dynamic work out between you guys?
Well, luckily, like, Justin and I are best friends. We grew up together in Michigan. So we've been friends literally since kindergarten. So we're like nice. Always on the same page. We're always in sync. We kind of always know what the other one's thinking. So on set, it's really useful because, well, before then, we do spend a lot of time sort of developing like our plan of how everything should look, how we're going to execute everything. We work very, very closely with like the DP and the actors. So we're always in sync, and it's been really useful on, both these projects because sometimes we have to wear multiple hats, but it's really useful. Like if one of us needs to, maybe talk to the actor, one of us needs to go down and do something with makeup, it's like divide and conquer. So it's really efficient. It's also just good emotionally to have that support because it can get really stressful and just emotionally draining. So it's just been a really like fortunate and I think efficient dynamic.
Yeah, I think that we both like don't really know how like directors, so many directors do it alone because it's such a large task that it even feels overwhelming for just two people. So it's just like it's really great having like that constant support system. And you know, whenever you're kind of second guessing yourself, like you do have someone to kind of bounce back on and like reassure you like if you are going in the right direction or not. And so it just really helps both of us. And I think that, you know, the same goes for even our writing process, just going back and forth. It, you know, we kind of have an automatic like notes system built in so that we feel kind of like we're several drafts in by the time we even finish like our first draft. So it's just, yeah, it's really great, especially, you know, being able to do it with my best friend. And, you know, just, I think helps a lot in just many ways. So.
Nice.
Excellent. Also, really quick, I wanted to ask, when you were looking into the mythology of the Djinn, like how deep did you guys go? Like, did you kind of go old school with sort of the stuff like during your research process, or did you sort of open up the rules a little bit to sort of make it work for the narrative that you were telling? And again, I'm being a little vague because I don't want to give anything away on how things play out in this. But I thought there were some really clever things that happened in this film that very much surprised me.
Well, thank you for not giving too much away. Yeah, we did, yeah, during our research. So it's interesting because once even the character of the Djinn itself was something that was partially born out of our limitations, because since we were shooting in an apartment, we were actually shooting without permits, and we didn't want to be very loud because we didn't want to upset the neighbors and didn't want them to then call and get us shut down possibly. So we ended up making Dylan mute. And because of that, we were like, okay, well, we want him to then want to have a wish to, like, you know, get his voice, which led to the whole emotional core of the story, which we won't, I guess, give away here. And then we started researching, okay, what is the most organic evil presence that would fit within that landscape? So we came at it really from a character's perspective that way. And then we really landed on, like, you know, the Djinn. Also, I think probably most people listening to this are familiar with Wishmaster, so we already kind of knew, you know, at least a little bit about Djinns in that regard. But then when we were looking into it more, we're like, oh my God, they cross over in so many different cultures. There's so many different lores about them. And we're like, well, this is perfect, because this way we can, like, you know, kind of look into the lore that does fit ours the best. And so we ended up drawing a little bit from more of like the occult versions that we saw of the Djinn. And, you know, also wanted to insert different aspects of his mythology, which, without, I guess, spoiling anything, allowed us to kind of increase the cast in an interesting way, because we were like, oh, this is something that is actually affiliated with Djinns that, you know, we actually weren't very familiar with before doing that research. So it did lead to a lot of like fun discovery. And yeah, that was like, I think that's when the story started to become really exciting, when we started putting all of that together and like finalizing like who this antagonist was and what Dylan was really going to be up against.
Excellent.
How did you guys go about figuring out how you wanted the score to sound? Because again, you know, we talked about, you referenced that it does reference some older 80s films, and there was that whole kind of 80s vibe to it, plus the great songs by that Time Cop 1983, which I just downloaded today because of you guys. So what was the decision behind all that, and how did you go about getting that done?
Well, that was a really easy process once we found our composer, Matthew James, who, you know, if you've seen the movie, the score is just literally one of the best parts of it. It was such a great experience working with him. You know, we grew up in the 90s, so we were born in the late 80s, but we grew up in the 90s. So we love that era. A lot of the movies we love are from, you know, the 80s. So we do like to tell stories that are in that landscape. So we knew we wanted it to have some of that fun and nostalgia. And then he really was able to infuse it with, you know, a little bit like modernity with some of the scares and action sequences. And it's just a really great collaborative process.
Nice.
We're so happy with how the score came out.
No, it was really beautiful. Is there going to be a soundtrack, do you think?
There is coming out May 21st.
Nice.
So we're so pumped about that and so happy for Matthew, for everyone to actually get to just experience his work like in full.
On vinyl?
Oh my God. So that's what we want, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen. It's, it's like since it is such a small movie, budget things, it's hard to like figure that out. I don't know if vinyl's going to work out, but hey, the more people that see the movie, maybe that can help us get it out on vinyl. So please do, or that purchase the, soundtrack, when it's released digitally. But yeah, that was always going into it, like a really important aspect for David and I. We're both really huge, like movie score geeks. And we had such like extensive conversations with Matthew about like the direction, and he just every single time we went in for a session, he just like blew us away with like what he had come up with, and we were just like, this is achieving everything we want and more. Like his ability to like infuse like really nostalgic, iconic like themes with like a strong emotional core is like and while also then being able to put a spin on it where it's like at times really like scary. It's just like, I mean, just in terms of listening to so many different scores, like it's so rare to find that. And to find it for like this movie that, it wasn't some like huge budget picture where you have like your pick of the litter. Like we are just so lucky to have found this amazing composer for this. So
I have to ask, because both of the films that I've seen from you guys are very ambitious, but in very different ways. And I'm curious, I think a lot of people sort of have this misconception that if you use like a singular location, you're almost cheating in a way, and it's like quote unquote easy, which is always like whenever people say filmmaking is easy, I'm just like, no, there's absolutely nothing about it that is easy. And I'm just curious for you guys, what were like the challenges of working within the space of the apartment? Because I've shot in an apartment before, and I've had somebody use my apartment for a shoot before, and it was the biggest pain in the ass like ever. And it's really tough because to me, it just felt like it was so many different ways you have to try to keep making things look visually interesting when you only have a certain amount of space and a certain amount of like walls and things like that to really keep people engaged with it on a visual level.
No, totally. It's the biggest pain in the world. But that was something we talked a lot with our DP about, really trying to keep the shots, having variety. We like hate having to ever like repeat a shot, like out of coverage, that's very typical. So you'll see people repeating shots or zooming in on them. We always try to push ourselves. So, even though we've been in this room a lot, maybe we can do it from this way, from this angle or this lens, or we really can change the lighting drastically, but it still like kind of works. For me, I think the biggest issue with shooting in the apartment was not sort of like coming up with the sequences, or even necessarily the visual language. It was more about just like the economy of space in terms of like where crew would be and where like the very few equipment stuff we would have would be. Because it's like we have some shots that are going through the whole apartment, in one take, and where do you hide like, apple boxes? We didn't have a lot, but still like anything. Where do you hide 11 people that are like, behind the scenes? There's no room. That was definitely the biggest, I think, challenge.
That was definitely a huge challenge. We really do come at things from like, we really think of this as a visual medium. So even when we're writing like any story, I think we're very like much kind of shot listing as we're writing. Like we don't really think about things in terms of like telling a story through dialogue. We really think of it in terms of like, what are people seeing and how are we telling the story with what they're going to see on screen. So since we were building the actual story around like the access to this apartment, I think coming up with the sequences, like David said, wasn't necessarily the most difficult thing. It was like once we were in there and like dealing with like the logistics of this being a very small apartment, that was a very tricky aspect. And then in terms of keeping it visually interesting, I mean, as you're watching, you can probably tell we did try to do a lot of interesting things with like lighting throughout, where like organically the story kind of allows the lighting to change given like certain things that happen. I don't want to spoil it. And also sometimes the state of the apartment changes based on, you know, an interaction or a conflict between Dylan and his antagonist. So those were kind of the ways that we wanted to keep things, you know, visually interesting. But definitely the hardest thing was just such a small space. You have people, you have equipment. Where does it all go?
You can't fit like 12 people in your bathroom or anything like that. So,
well, especially not when the bathroom is one of the things being shown. It's like
exactly.
People being stuffed in closets, under beds. Like that's where we were at.
I mean, what an amazing job, though. You would never know. I mean, it was fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do you have one last question, Kevin? I know we're kind of getting close on time.
I don't have much of a question as much of a statement as what I appreciated about this film. A number of things, obviously, but I noticed that like as it progressed, and this is how you want a film to go, of course, too. But you kind of jump in with the suspense and the horror of the situation, and that's reminiscent too of like those movies that we love from the '80s, where they just kind of get you right into the cool story of it, and you get excited and you're wondering what's going to happen. But I there was a point where I noticed like I would stop breathing, and then I think I was watching, I was like in my bed and I was like doing this because I was like, don't, I can't say anything. But there was aspects where I was afraid for him. And I think Ezra does such a good job of, I mean, obviously portraying a kid in peril, but you really, really felt for him. Again, my best friend was like, every time he cries, like it bothers me. I was like, oh, but it was just so beautifully done, and it really kept me going, and it was a good hour and 20 minutes. I'm telling you.
Thank you very much for that. And we agree about everything you just said about Ezra. He's just like next level.
He makes our job really easy.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Good. Like I said, I know we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask one last question. Are you guys planning on traumatizing more children in the future? Or do you have other things going? Like, are you going to move on to like teenagers, like late teens? I'm just curious if we have more child trauma coming our way in the future.
They can make their own genre.
I mean, it really is. So, which is, you know, I think that's what like I loved about like movies, like when I was a kid. Like you mentioned Child's Play, and there's the scene when Andy is being held and he's in that room by himself and he's just crying in the corner and he's so upset. Like I still watch that, and I don't have kids, but I literally like I almost start crying for him because first of all, Alex Vincent is so good in that role. Yeah. But like in that moment, there's just like sheer panic and terror and just like a total breakdown. Like I just like you feel so bad. And I think like so many people say like, oh, you know, never work with kids and everything like that. But I think kids give some of the best performances like out there, yep. Genre space or otherwise. And I love the fact that you guys are sort of keeping that tradition alive, because I think we sort of skew a little older sometimes. Sure. So. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you recognize that about horror in general. We have very similar sentiments. We definitely plan on traumatizing more children. You know, like in our movies. They are traumatized on set. I would like to point that out. They do seem to, at least so far, have a lot of fun on set. But, like in terms of what you're seeing on screen, we do plan on doing that more in the future. But we do also want to, torture some adults and teenagers in there too. We don't want to, just be, exclusive for the children. The adults need to get on this terror too.
We deserve it as older folks. We've got it coming.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you guys watching at home, The Djinn is out this Friday, courtesy of IFC Midnight. I cannot recommend it enough. You guys are going to have a lot of fun with it. To David and Justin, thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. So thank you again.
Thank you both so much for having us.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And we are officially back, everybody. Thank you so much again to Justin and David for taking time to chat with us. We really appreciate it. And as we mentioned earlier, The Djinn will be coming out this Friday. So we do highly recommend you giving it some time. Kevin, do you have any other recommendations to sort of wrap everything up this week?
You know what? I just don't. I think we talked about everything that I liked.
Because there's just so much already.
It's really a lot. Like I need a break.
Yeah. I recently, I've got a few reviews that are going to be going up this week, but I checked out a few sort of smaller movies. One of them was sort of a Vice mockumentary called like the 15 Things to Know About Bigfoot. Number 1 will blow your mind. That's like the whole thing. Hilarious. Laughed my ass off. I was really surprised by it. It's funny because I talked about that Sasquatch documentary a few episodes ago where it's very serious, where they're going into sort of the Emerald Triangle in California and murders tied to pot farms and things like that. And then this ends up sort of being very similar, but they do it in a humorous way. But it's probably the hardest I've laughed since Barb and Star.
Wow. Okay.
So I was really, really impressed by it. And honestly, I think for people like us who do the kind of work that we do, it was really relatable in that way, that it sort of poked fun at some of the frustrations we have and things like that. So that's one I definitely recommend.
Okay.
And I also watched Friedberry, which is a movie, I believe, out of South Africa. Okay. And it just recently premiered on Shudder, and they also just played it as last week's one of the movies from last week's episode of Joe Bob.
Oh, okay.
And it's super bizarre, weird, druggy, alien abductions, crazy sex scene things. It's hard to describe. I mean, there's like the cast is like in the hundreds, and this movie was made for like barely any money. I think it has something like 40 locations. It's super ambitious and weird, but I like weird, so I was on board with it. My other half was a little less enthused about it, but I had fun with it. So that was one that I was kind of like, oh, I was not really expecting that to be as fun as it was. And I think it also says something really interesting about addiction as well.
Okay.
Which I think is a struggle that a lot of people out there have. So, not only does it sort of touch on important stuff, but it also is just a freaking crazy wild out there trip.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
good.
yeah. So,
right.
yeah. But
Friday.
yeah, I'm thinking that's about it. So, yeah. But thank you guys so much for watching. We will not be here next week. Kevin's got a trip to the magical world of Disney, which I'm definitely not jealous about. But so James Oster will be here next week taking over Horrifically Horrifying, so make sure to tune in for him. But we will be back here eventually.
Couple weeks.
You can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of us that forever. So we will be back, and that is a threat.
We will be out here back to talk about things that are unrelated and tangential, whatever the word is.
Yes, and maybe Fran Drescher will be here. We don't know.
Like I was like, we could do it for our Christmas. I don't want to wait till Christmas. We need to do it now.
Yes, we have to.
We'll do Christmas in July. Christmas in July.
Love it. There you go.
And a sleigh.
All right, we're gonna make it happen. So, anyway, guys, well, we're probably planning Christmas in July. You guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to be out there supporting all the great horror, both studio and independent. And we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.